Hello, and welcome to the Divine Feminine Leaders podcast. My name is Celeste Hartwell, and this is a project that is very near and dear to my heart. So what we're doing in this is that we're communicating, we're talking to women who really are living their best life. And oftentimes these are women who have stepped out of anxiety and stress and overwhelm and really have come into confidence and clarity, and basically showing you, the listener or the watcher of this video cast, what is possible for you. I'm really passionate about this because I myself have struggled with anxiety and depression and overwhelm, and let me tell you, it is possible to get to joy, to get to bliss, to be able to live your best life. And so today I am so honored and really excited to introduce you to Elicia Miller. I've known Elicia for a few years, and she's the founder of the Core Emotional Healing, and she's a Candida expert. So see, she actually fully healed her own symptoms and many problematic relationship patterns, and has been able to actualize her inherent empathic gifts to read people, know the root of their suffering, and how they can heal. She's worked with people from all over the world, helping them heal from candida, autoimmune, disordered eating, perfectionism, codependency, and many other symptoms. Elicia created the Core Emotional Healing process, a guided step-by-step process to heal the wounded inner child, which addresses the emotional root cause of candida, autoimmune, disordered eating, codependency, and other symptomatic and problematic relationship patterns. She is the author of an ebook, Detox 101, and co-author of One Crazy Broccoli and What's Left to Eat. Her new book, Your Symptoms Are a Gift, is scheduled to be released next year. I'm so excited to see that. And I know Elicia for years. We were in a mastermind a few years ago, and actually I had candida as well. And so we were able to really connect through that journey, and hearing about how she was helping people, I was like, maybe I didn't deal with everything from my candida. But she's brilliant and beautiful. And one of the reasons that she's super inspiring to me is that she's now living her best life in Costa Rica. So she recently moved from the States and literally sold a lot of stuff, if not everything. We'll have to talk about that. And really has been kind of shedding all these layers of what society has told her she needed to be, and really stepping into her own best self. So welcome, Elicia.
Thanks, Celeste. So great to be here with you, and you know, in how far we both come since we first met.
Yeah.
Stepping into both of our power and best life. Yeah,
absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, the work you do is so important. You're so passionate about, I like, clearly Elicia and I are friends on Facebook, so I'm a little stalker sometimes, but she's really, what I really love about you is that you aren't just about like law of attraction, just think good thoughts. You're like, no, there's something underneath of that. How do we get to the core of that? So do you want to talk a little bit about the work around that, and why is it so important?
Yeah. It's really the work that's important for all of us now is, you know, we've gone through many stages in healing, and there was, you know, this big movement around positive thinking, your thoughts creating your reality, and you know, that sets people up for a lot of feelings of failure and guilt and shame that they're still suffering and it's their fault. So the work that I do is, you know, acknowledging and validating the suffering, and it's not your fault. There is a reason and there's a root, and so the work that I do is just going back and exploring the root, the source of the suffering, and you know, typically goes back to our childhood and our inner child, and the part of us that was shamed and repressed and made wrong, and in that there's also a lot of gifts that are hidden as well. So the best part of us is often hidden from us, and because we're not living from that place, we're misaligned, and it does create a lot of suffering and struggles. And it gets expressed through our bodies and with chronic symptoms, with food sensitivities and allergies, with patterns in relationships that are, painful, emotional eating, addictions. So there's so many symptoms of the wounds that are still needing us to be with and feel and resolve.
I love that. And I have found that so true in my journey as well. Like, oftentimes, if we have the awareness, when we come into the awareness that we're having an emotion, and just acknowledging it, like you mentioned, like acknowledging, oh, I'm feeling sad right now, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling resentful, like whatever that is. I've learned to ask, and I don't know what your work is with people, but like I've learned to ask, like, where is this coming from? And then often like a memory will come up of like, oh yeah, that time when I was 10 years old and I felt shame and guilt and hated myself for that. And then, I've learned a process to like kind of go back and heal that in the moment.
Yes.
So I'm curious, like, it sounds like that's the type of work that you're doing with people.
Yes. So there's so much information through our emotions and through our bodies. So I help people listen to their symptoms and also their emotions and the triggers. And there's more things too that we explore, like dreams, messages from animals, pets, just kind of being the observer with what's happening in the present moment and interpreting the messages. But I love working with triggers, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because triggers are such a gift. And, I don't want to say like every time you're emotional or angry, it's a trigger and it always goes back, because there are many different reasons for emotions, and some are valid reasons in the present that alert us, to set a boundary, or it could be just a part of us that we're rejecting within ourselves that we're seeing in someone else. So those are other sources of triggers, but there are triggers that happen for us that lead back to a core wound, as you just explained. And that is, this work happens over our lifetime. So it's, I really do teach to embrace the journey. And it's not a one-time thing. It's not something that you work with me for a few months and you're done, or you go to a retreat and you're done. It's like it's really teaching the process to embrace and to be comfortable with as things come up. Even I went through a really deep healing process myself. I continue to as well, and just recently, this past week, that was really, really intense. But it came through a trigger, and it was exactly the what I experienced, in my childhood, through someone on Facebook attacking me for my truth and shaming me for my feelings. And I was like, okay. And right after that, I went to do a Facebook Live with my clients, and on the way into the room, there was a snake skin that was shed. And I was like, there was this process I had been in. So it was just all these like signs of what was happening for me. And then it was just the next day, and then the next day. And then it was on the Friday, the 13th, the full moon, that I actually felt the fear. And because I do this work, I was able to go into it and know what I needed to do. But it, a lot of deep kind of just inner child healing, why I felt unsafe as a child, and a whole emotional process with that. But
yeah, and I think that's beautiful. So I love hearing about the signs that came up for you, kind of showing you what was going on and how to get into that. And that's definitely been something that I've learned as well. Like, it's amazing the things that come up. And I love the fact that you're teaching people how to do this, because these are lifetime tools. It is a process. It is a journey. It's not a one size, fits all quick fix Band-Aid. Like, every individual has these different core wounds and emotions and ways that things manifest. And so I wanted to hear a little bit about how you got into this work, because I know you had quite a journey just to even get into this.
Yeah, it was a very long journey to just start doing this process. As you mentioned, in my bio, I'm a Candida expert because I had a very long journey with Candida. And so I started focusing on healing my physical symptoms in my early 20s. And so I learned that, the diet was, impacting it, and I didn't need to take antibiotics or treating it with medicine. And I started doing a more holistic approach. But the diet didn't work for me. And I did diet and supplements for over 10 years, maybe almost 15 years, and a ton of detoxing and cleansing. And at the same time, I was dealing with pattern in relationships. So at the end of the journey, I discovered the correlation. But so, I was dealing with, I was also with men who were abusive or emotionally unavailable all throughout my 20s. And then I married kind of the worst of them when I was 30, and I left him after 3 months. And it was really scary, and I had to file a police report and all of that. So it was the first time, at that age, I actually turned within and said, what made me choose that? There's something I don't know. There's something going on that I'm not aware of, because it's not just him, it was all of them. Why am I choosing guys who are not good for me? And so that's when I started doing the work that I do. I went to coursework that deals with the subconscious, childhood patterning and emotional healing, experiential therapy. And so I did every course they offered. I assisted in them, and I did it straight for 4 years, sometimes every month. And it shifted me so much. I kept on going, oh, wow, like it was so profound. Just the first weekend I did, I said, what else don't I know? And that approach has helped me with, continuing my healing. So I see when people say, like, I've already done that, it blocks their healing. So, just having that approach of saying, like, what else don't I know? What else is there? So that was, 30 to 34. And I shed so much false identity. And I opened up to really feel my emotions at that point and listen to myself and listen to spirit. And I ended up selling everything I owned at that point and moving to Thailand. And, I was 34, so it was 10 years ago, actually. Here I am 10 years later, kind of doing the same thing, selling everything I own and moving to a tropical place. But in Thailand is when I really came to see that I had a problem. It was like, okay, I have systemic candida. I've been dabbling and trying to treat it with diet and supplements, but never really taking it serious, because I was a consultant with all these detox retreats and healers and things there. And I thought I was there to build and create my business, which I was a little bit, but it was more about my healing ultimately, and seeing that what I needed. And I tried everything. I did a ton of, fasts and cleanses and energy healers and shamanic healers and family constellations. And a lot of it helped me to a point. So I did feel better. And I did start healing more emotionally, but I still struggled with some candida symptoms and emotional eating, and my bulimia. Actually, I had also eating disorders throughout my life, starting at 15, was getting stronger. And so as I was leaving Thailand, I met an emotional therapist, and she helped me. It was similar work that I do now. There was some missing pieces that I kind of filled in later, but she helped me really access the stuff I wasn't getting to, that was at the root of a lot of my bulimia and candida, a lot of repressed anger, and connecting more to my inner child. I did go to San Francisco after that, and I kind of was in my wounds. And so that was kind of the missing piece for me. I didn't really know how to reparent myself and work with triggers and boundaries. And that's why I teach what I do as well, to, really help people with the full process. And so I went into some really deep, dark places after that, and really bad place with depression and wanting to die. And I did work with the holistic community in San Francisco. So luckily I was already in that community. I was getting the support I needed. I ended up leaving San Francisco and going to Costa Rica for a 30-day water fast. So I was really trying everything and experimenting. And for me, it was all about truth. Like, what is my truth? Like, what really works? It's not what someone else is saying. It's about my experience. So I wanted to try it for myself. And at that point, I felt better every time. But then again, like, I would go back to emotional eating and bloating, and some symptoms would flare up. So a client brought me back to Atlanta. Atlanta is where I lived before I went to Thailand. And so it was exactly 3 years later. And I was working with a client. I got into a relationship for the first time after 7 years of being single, after that abusive marriage. And I had focused those 7 years on healing. So I thought I was done. I thought I was not done, but I thought I had addressed enough to really be in a relationship. And it was the exact pattern that just had a prettier package on it. And just another one of those twin flames that were to wake me up like the first one did. And so it was really difficult. He was unavailable. He was with another woman. He wouldn't commit to me, wouldn't really be there for me, called me back. And I was just like hanging on with this and trying to push him away, but always going back. And there was a conflict within myself. I could see, like, and what it really was my wounded inner child that was really craving my father's love still. And then there was my higher self that was like, this is not what you want. This is not good for you. And it was just like this thing that happened for a year and a half, where I would just go back for like a weekend and then stop talking to him for a couple months. And then it was, at one point, I was with him, and I was crying because I missed an appointment with that emotional therapist, ironically, because I got the timing mixed up because she lives in Australia. And he, said something about me being a victim for crying and get it together. And I went right into these wounds, and I went home and I was bawling, crying on my bathroom floor, and yeast was pouring out of me, and I was bloated like I was pregnant. And at that point, I knew it was emotional. So at that point, I was also still kind of restricting my diet sometimes just to feel better. Like, at that point, for 2 weeks or something, I wasn't eating any sugar. It was just kind of like a candida diet. I wasn't drinking any alcohol. And I was like, this is emotional. And that's when I just really committed more to my inner child and learning some skills to set clearer boundaries, releasing more anger, and helping my inner child truly feel loved by me. So lovable, and what that would look like how would she feel lovable and supported by me, with me, and also like with how I feel about myself, with my connection to her, listening to my feelings, because I wasn't really listening to how I was feeling and taking care of them. And then also who I was choosing to be with, even, friendships, and how I was proving myself or taking on too much or being there for other people and neglecting my own needs. So that's kind of how I started this process of core emotional healing, was doing it on myself. And that shifted everything for me. My symptoms went away completely. So that was 6 years ago. I never had emotional eating ever again. And I thought I had to live with that for the rest of my life. And it was like completely gone because I felt safe. I was feeling safe, feeling my emotions, and I never needed to use anything anymore. And I can eat whatever I want too. So I eat, pizza or whatever. Like I can eat whatever I want and it doesn't matter. So there was like these huge things where like, I cannot believe this actually happened. But also 3 months after that, I met Doug, my husband, and it was, full, complete healing for my inner child because I got the true love and support that I needed, that I never had in my entire life. So someone that truly loves and supports me for me. And, he's a clinical forensic transpersonal psychologist. So totally aligned with my work. So in terms of feeling supported, he supports me emotionally and also in business. So it was just a perfect union for us, with continuing the healing as well. So it wasn't that I was done. I was kind of done with that piece of neglecting myself and my emotional needs. And we came together as, two people that were taking care of themselves. And so he had already done so much, before that as well. So we weren't codependent with each other or, needing each other to help each other feel better. So, but we did go through years and we continued to here and there, but the first couple years were extremely hard in terms of all the triggers that happened for us with all of the things that we weren't able to feel because we didn't have the safety or love, that container that we have together to go into those places. So yeah, it continued and we do work together now, with in-person experiential therapy immersions that we created a process together. We had a radio show together called the Intimacy Hour. We've done so much together with our relationship and healing it that we also work with couples and helping them through painful patterns and triggers, and couples on the brink of divorce and things like that to see what's really going on.
I love that.
And also couples that shouldn't be together that we help see why. So
yeah. I love all that. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
It feels like it was like an integration process with your inner child, right? Like
yeah.
It feels like maybe you had been like, oh no, you're okay. Like you're gonna, like kind of putting her off in the corner for a long time, not acknowledging her feelings, not acknowledging her wants and desires. And then when you were able to like just bring her in and be like, what do you need? Like, what am I feeling? What do you need? Like, to me, the way I've seen it is like, there's all these different, at every age, like there's these different pieces of us that if we weren't acknowledging their feelings, their experiences, their pain, their sorrow, their trauma, whatever that looks like, that they kind of splinter off until we can hold the compassion for ourselves to kind of bring them all back in. So it feels like that's the work that you do now with people as well as with yourself.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it's definitely not conscious, for anyone. We don't know we're doing it. And that's why I say your symptoms are a gift. It's my tagline and book, because I didn't know that I was neglecting her or that she was split off, because I had done 7 years of, I had done a little here and there. I had connected with her and helped her. Like I was like, I'm going to take care of you now, but the emotional piece was missing, or I had released a lot of emotions at certain points, with help of others. I went through a lot of deep emotional healing, but there was like that piece of me really like listening to my feelings on an ongoing basis and making choices based on how I felt. So that piece was missing. And yeah, so it was kind of like, oh, okay. But also through the relationship trigger, it was helping me see that I still didn't feel lovable, because that's how I felt with him, and not good enough and, not lovable. So I had to help her feel those things, with myself, but also with my choices. Yeah.
Right.
And then from there was like, then I can continue to heal her as things come up. Right.
Right. It's maintaining that relationship with that inner child and continually doing it, and knowing that you're the one who provides her the safety and the security and the love, so that like she feels safe to have these expressions, to have these emotions, to have that. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It was a long journey.
It was a long journey.
It's a long story.
And I think it's great because people do think, well, I've been on this healing journey. I've heard people be like, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been doing this for 40 years. Like, when is it ever going to be done? I mean, and I think it's a beautiful space if you can get to the space where you're like, this is just life. Like,
yeah.
And it's kind of what happens. And I get to choose how I'm going to approach it. Am I going to approach it with some curiosity and openness? And like, continue to make the best decisions that I can in the moment? Or am I going to close off, like you were saying, and say, I know this already. I've done this already.
Right. Yeah. And, I think it's about really why we're doing it, and, with your podcast, like the Divine Feminine, it's like, this is all about integrating our higher self into our body. It's not ascending this way, but descending into our body, like our higher self into our body. And in order to do that, we have to heal all of the stuff that's in the way, and that will come up for us. So the beautiful thing about it is that we don't have to go searching for it, and that when we just allow and surrender and appreciate when things come up for us, it's like our bodies and triggers and relationship patterns are all healers for us, that are saying, hey, this is what's up for you right now. And this is an opportunity for you to be more of who you truly are, and your divinity, and healing your heart so you can be more love and share more love with people, and be more conscious of how we respond to everyone as well. And yeah, it's a beautiful process once people do embrace the gifts from it. It's like, okay, and I know as things come up, you don't know it, but by embracing it, you experience it more and more. And yeah, it's always surprising to me where I think I had done something and there was even more to that same thing, so that's important too. It's like, yes, you've done it, and then there's more for you to feel around it, in a different way sometimes, or something else to acknowledge around it, of how there's these subtle ways that we still feel hurt with these certain situations, and we don't even realize that we still just need to feel how we were hurt from when it first happened. And then that's really about being in our power. Like, people can say things to us, but it's not going to hit that old hurt anymore. We can just hold space for it, and hold space for their pain. And that's really, that open-hearted divinity of just loving people without our personal reactions. But, our personal reactions will help us heal what we need to heal.
Right. And so I want to go back a little bit, because I think you touched on something really important so briefly, that you were talking about the Divine Feminine, like descending, like coming into us. I feel like, and I've been guilty of this, so this is why I'm calling it, because I see it clearly. Like, a lot of us, we're so uncomfortable in our bodies with our emotions that we're meditating out of our bodies, like allowing our spirit to get out, and it feels great and it's more comfortable, but it's actually not helping us do the work that we're here to do, which is to have our spirit solely in our body. And I see this I went to a meditation retreat that was 10 days in silence a couple years ago. And it was very, you had to be in your body. Your whole focus was on different parts of your body. And I'm losing the word now, but it was very physical in that sense, right? Like very
embodied.
Yeah, embodied, grounded in the body. And I had been meditating out of my body for years. And what happened was I started getting stabbing pains in my head, in my skull, over and over and over again. And I had to sit there and I had to feel it and I had to allow it. And I did question, like, where is this coming from? What is going on here? And I was able to see that these were pains that I actually had in childhood, but had ignored. So my body stopped sending me the signals that way, right?
Yeah.
And so this work is often physically uncomfortable at first. But that's how we're able to live our best life, is by bringing our soul back, our spirit back into full integration into the physical body, to feel these things, to be able to release that energy, and then be able to really be guided by your soul, by your spirit, by your own divine nature. And so thank you for bringing that up, because I was like, oh, that's so big. So many people do it.
Yeah, it is big. It's really big. It's the spiritual side of wanting to take a pill for your pain, right? It's like we have a pain and like, I just need to get rid of it. How do I get rid of it? And so, that we've been conditioned to treat our symptoms to get rid of the pain instead of listening to the pain. And same with, certain spiritual practices. And if we're still in that defense, so that's a ego defense from childhood that was built up to not feel pain, or to live in our heads, or, rationalize things, then we'll gravitate towards spiritual practices that are going to be comfortable for us. So, like leaving our bodies and ascending, and if there's any pain or negative thoughts, to shift them, to do something that's high vibration, to, instead of just sitting with it and going into it. And that's the work. And that is a whole different way of thinking. And it's important for people to learn. I mean, that's really, it's a learning process. It's a relearning process of, our parents were like, you're okay, don't be sad, everything's okay, right? Or stop crying, or be, put on a smile. So we've been conditioned. We have to relearn that we have to feel how we're feeling. And that's where our guidance is. And that's where our true power is, actually. So our intuition is about how we feel. This doesn't feel good. Is important, because if we deny that this doesn't feel good, then we'll allow people to treat us bad. So, that's where we get stuck in abusive situations, or people taking advantage of us, or always giving to other people, because that's what we were conditioned to ignore, how we actually felt, and to do what they wanted us to do. So, this whole thing is like listening to your feelings, because your feelings are your truth. But it's a learning process of being okay with not feeling good too. So it's going back and I find that the inner child connection can help with this, because it's this new, it's like more parents are able to be with their children's emotions now. More parents are more conscious, especially in our circles, of like, it's okay, you can feel, I'm sorry you feel sad, it's okay to feel sad. And they just need to turn that on themselves and their inner child. So sometimes that's easier to think about. It's like, oh, you're feeling sad, treat yourself like you would your child, and it's okay to feel sad. And what are you sad about? And tell me, what's making you angry? What do you need?
Yeah, for sure. And so talk to me a little bit about, I feel compelled to ask about like your daily rituals, your weekly rituals, your monthly rituals. Like, how do you support your inner child? How do you support your connection to your own intuition, spirit, etc.?
So I actually don't have any rituals, and I've gone from, so I've healed from a lot. So I've been very restrictive in my past, and I healed from perfectionism. And this is just my personal path, and I do truly believe that everyone has their own way of taking care of themselves. I know that everyone has their own path in terms of how they feel connected to source. And some people do need to meditate and do yoga and things like that. I used to do that every day. It used to be my like routine, but I used to use that just like I was using detoxing and cleansing. And so I was always very structured and strict with myself because I thought I needed to do all of that to be perfect or okay with myself or feel better about myself. So with my journey, I've really have thrown out everything about routines, and I just listen to my feelings, and I kind of live spontaneously in the moment to moment. So I can do that even more so here in Costa Rica because I'm really connected to nature and myself more so here. And that's why we moved here. Back in the US, I felt disconnected from myself because I was too much in that kind of like buzzing in the city, and I was really couldn't fully like settle into myself. And I need personally, I need to be in nature, and I need to be in a tropical place where I'm warm. So that's my personal needs. So that's, for one, I guess right there is taking care of my inner child, because I know what I need to do to feel connected to myself, in what environment I need to be in. And from there, so as long as I'm connected to myself and I'm feeling how I'm feeling, then I know what I need. Like, and it's not, I don't do anything every day. So like, I'll stretch some days. I may do Pilates some days. I'll dance and sing in the pool and make up songs. I'll go swimming. I may just take my dog for a walk. So it's very much like in the moment, whatever I feel like will help, whatever I need. So I wrote a post a couple weeks ago. I felt kind of like, I woke up and I felt kind of like claustrophobic in my energy. So I'm really in tune with how my energy's feeling, and I just respond to that. So this one day I was like claustrophobic, and I knew I needed to just walk on the beach. So I just took my dog, got in the car, and went to the beach, and then I started flowing, like my energy was flowing, and I got my inspiration. So my meditation's more active versus sitting, and that's how I clear, and I'm connected to my higher self and inspiration. And sometimes it's just, yeah, it varies. I do very different things.
I love that. And I think that you're right. Like, I've definitely done that in the past, which is like using the routine as a whipping stick, right? Well, you didn't get it done, or you didn't do it quite right, or whatever. And I have learned like what feels best for me, and what do I want, how do I want to show up every day. And I think that's important too. I know I used to as well be like, oh, well, so-and-so who's crazy famous or whatever does this every day. Right. So then I need to do that as well. And what I appreciate you pointing that out, because that is one of my big stressors here, is that find what works for you as the listener. Like, it doesn't need to be what my morning routine is, what your daily routine is. Like, but it is about feeling into, what do I actually need? What is my soul calling me to do? What does my body need in this moment? Kind of that body, mind, soul, that spirit connection, all of that. But I know that you've been getting into more creative endeavors.
Yeah.
And yes. So I want to hear about that.
So being in Costa Rica has helped me, again, connect more deeply to myself and my creativity. And I haven't been in my mind and thinking about work. And so in the US, I don't know if it's just the US consciousness or what, or how connected I was to that. But being here, I don't think of it's not consuming my mind. So my mind is and I'm more connected to my body. So things are coming out more. My creativity is coming out more. And some things that we've been doing has helped that too. So Doug and I have started an improv group here. So we're performing improv shows. And so that's been really freeing to like help my expression, free up my expression and my creativity, because if anyone doesn't know improv comedy, we make up everything on the spot based on audience suggestions. So we don't even know what we're going to do at all. So it really helps you trust yourself of whatever comes out, and also just to be more kind of creative in the moment. So I think that in combination with that, and also just being in my element here, I've been writing rap songs again, which I have at various times in my life, and just singing. I sing a lot. I make up songs, just silly songs about the dogs and things like that. And then I'll play in the pool and we'll dance and we'll laugh. And so we're just playing a lot here. And then recently I started finding more of my artistic expression. Like I started taking photos. I've always taken photos, but there's this style that I found that's like mine, and I felt it throughout my body. As soon as I took a picture and I went to kind of just adjust it, I felt it throughout my whole body. And I said to my husband, this is my favorite picture I've ever taken. And from there, I just started like seeing things, and it would catch my eye and I would feel it in my body, and I would take it. And there's these just stunning images of all black background with just a very focused in on something here in Costa Rica, like a flower or a coconut or like a rock formation. Or so they're just for me, it just feels like I found my my art. And it's interesting because I said ever since I was 3, I think, or 4, something happened then, but I said I wasn't creative, and I just shut it down. And it might have been a comment or something from a parent, but I remembered recently when now I have my art, and I actually am printing these on glass, and I'm going to have like a show, and this all came out. I never thought about doing this ever, and selling them online and things. It's just like, it just happened. Like I didn't even put any effort into it. And so I just remembered that like when I was 3 or 4, probably, I was coming home from kindergarten, and I would say, do you want to see my pictures? Do you want to see my pictures? Do you want to see my pictures? And it was just like a thing I used to say. And I was like, wow, like that's like what I was really wanting, was these, like, to show people my pictures. And that was shut down until now. I'm almost 45 years old. So, that's a long time, 40 years. And I also said I wasn't a writer, and I write all the time. And my writing comes when I go through processes, when I go through like deep emotional processes and things like that, I'll just sit down, it just flows out. So a lot of my creation and writing and things comes from my emotions and, the things that I do go through versus, meditating or, certain types of yoga I used to do. But yeah, so I feel like I'm finally like living, I guess all of my, not all, like the multifaceted person that I am. Like both Doug and I are very like complex, and like there's another word I said about us, like we're very emotional, and that's why we both do emotional work, but we have like a lot of like facets to us that we express, with play and intensity and meaning and truth and creativity. So I feel just really more whole and complete. And yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing all of that. And the writing, to me, like I love that, because clearly I love to write and I think it's amazing, but it's so healing. Like it's so cathartic to just
Oh
get it
yeah.
all out. So I love the fact that you've been doing that, even though you weren't seeing yourself as creative, that you've been doing the writing, because it is creative.
Yeah, well, that was it. That was a block that I had healed, that I cleared actually 3 years ago. I would write, but I always felt a little blocked with my true voice, to the point where I would hire other people. Like, so I just really had a lot of self-doubt. I would write my own blogs and things, but they were not really my authentic voice, in my full expression. And then I would hire people for my copy and certain things. And then I knew there was a book in me, and I was like, this is like the thing that scares me the most. The thing that scares me the most is what you need to do. But I was like, but I can't even write. I'm totally blocked. And I had an insight that week of what was creating the block, and it was around my mom. And so it was like I was sharing my work with her, and it was like, this is what I'm doing with Doug, and this thing that we created, and the work that we're doing in Thailand, and all that, we're doing retreats. And she was like, well, anyway. And I was like, there it is. I was like, what I have to say isn't important. So I went through an emotional process on my own, of really going through like the anger I needed to express, that cleared the block, of other things too, about how I didn't feel important. And it took, maybe 15 minutes. It's not like a big process either. Just wanted to also share that, because people are like, oh, if I go into my anger, I'm never going to get out of it. Or, I'm scared of what could happen. And so it's really just like a burst of acknowledgement and validation of your feelings for a short period of time, very short. And then literally after that, I sat down and just went whoosh, and wrote the whole blog. And it was the best thing I've ever written. And then from that point on, my messages were really on point and true for me, and just flowing. So that is what cleared my writer's block. But there was still more. So even though I've been writing, the thing that I shared in the beginning of this interview is that I went through something this past week on Facebook, and it was just a very, very, very deep layer of shame that was still there, of being censored still around what I say. And this was really important for me to clear. It was really big what I went through this past weekend. And then I wrote down Saturday morning, just flowed everything without censoring it at all. And it was so much. And I wanted to share this because we work kind of shamanically, Doug and I do, with all the animals and our pets. And right after I finished, I felt it stirring in my stomach, my truth and clearing the shame. And my dog, who is like my inner child, who I rescued, I wrote a whole story about my rescuing her 2.5 years ago. I wrote her healing story from her perspective. It's so funny, and cute, and actually inspiring. But so her and I are very connected. She actually helped me heal another layer. When I rescued her, I went into a really deep grieving process, because she triggered something with my father's, how he abandoned and betrayed me, and that hers did as well. And I rescued her. Anyway, so after I wrote this thing on Saturday, she puked right after I was done. It was like this green, yellow vial. And I was like, there's the shame. So, between that and the snake skin, and I just love all these, how we're so connected to nature.
Yeah, and all the external signs when we're open to seeing that that's what it is. Right?
Yeah.
Often our animals do take on so much for us. And when we're able to be aware and conscious of what they're holding, then being able to support that for them to allow them to.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And sometimes they show us too, like they're showing a pattern, like displaying it for us. It's really cool. Mm-hmm.
right. Right. Absolutely. Oh my God. I love that. Thank you for sharing all of that. Ooh, so good. So
Yeah.
I'm curious if you have any like tips or tools or tricks that you can give anybody to, like, if they're like, oh my God, this sounds amazing, and I wouldn't even know where to start. Like, what could I do on my own? Is there anything that you'd like to share?
Well, I did share a lot. I mean, I can summarize some of the things that are my top tips,
Yeah.
especially even the things that we've shared today, like, embracing the journey, right? Like throwing away that whole thinking that you've already done it or you've been already healing and it hasn't worked. So those are like, I have a core emotional healing self-study online course, so they could do that. But in that, the first lesson, I start with what are the blocks. So it's important to know what's been blocking, how you can still move forward in your healing or go deeper into your healing. So the blocks, and that's like the top block, is that I've already done it, or I've tried it, everything is not working because I'm still experiencing X, Y, and Z. Well, you're experiencing X, Y, and Z because you haven't addressed that, and there's something more for you. There's still something more with this, message or the lesson that you haven't gotten to yet. And when you haven't gotten to it yet, you have to seek help. Like, we have to work with someone, because if you haven't gotten to it yet, you haven't been able to see it yourself. And we can't see our own patterns mostly. And so it's really important to, seek help and seek someone who can help you with getting to what it's about for you. But just embracing the journey, as we talked about, and knowing that things will come up for you. Another thing, a tip would be paying attention to chronic symptoms, writing them down. I use Messages from the Body by Dr. Michael J. Lincoln. It's an accurate book on the psychological meaning of symptoms that I've found. Every single person that I work with or people I talk to will be talking and getting clear on what's happening with them. And then everything that we've talked about, finally they'll go, oh, and I have hair loss or something like that. And I'll look it up and it's exactly what we talked about. So that happens every time. So the message from the body doesn't give you how to heal, but it's a confirmation that this is the thing that you're working on right now. Learning, interpreting the messages from the body is really important to see, okay, this is important for you right now. This is what you're learning. Also your triggers. So another thing that we talked about today is, writing down what's triggering you, what pattern you keep getting into, what do you keep noticing where people are hurting you, or where you have these strong reactions. Just wanted to see if you're still there. Okay, I don't know if you were
coming in and out.
Okay, yeah.
Mainly there.
Yeah, I think both of our connections may be freezing a little bit. So the triggers. So two things I say often are your symptoms are a gift and your triggers are a gift, because they're both helping you. It's like a doorway to your unconscious, pointing to something that you're not aware of that can help you go to the source of what's causing it. And so the triggers is another process, to learn about, but, start seeing like what's triggering you, how you feel, what does this remind you of? Like you talked about in the beginning, Celeste, is like, who does this remind you of? Who treated you this way? And, just going back and doing that. Journaling. I'm a certified journaling facilitator. I didn't even mention that today. That's how I began my business. It was like 12 years ago. I became a certified journaling facilitator, and I used journaling, and I created over 100 worksheets of journaling questions and things for this process. So it's such a powerful tool for us to release emotions, to process emotions, to get clear on what we need, to listen to our higher selves, and all of that. I also have a workshop and that self-study. So, there's certain tools that we have available to us all the time, just helping us gain clarity with our needs. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you so much. Like, I love that. It was a great summary. And it was like, yeah, there's so much in there, but sometimes people can't hear in the story, like exactly what the tools and tricks and tips are. So thank you so much for that summary. I think that's amazing. And I don't know that we defined it before, but I just feel called to say this, which is a trigger is any negative reaction, or if you're angry, if somebody cut you off in the car and you're feeling unsafe all of a sudden, and instead of going, oh my God, I was really scared, you're like, fuck that guy, or whatever, right? Like you're having this very outburst reaction. And it can show up in multiple ways. It doesn't have to show up so intense, but it's any time you're having like a really strong emotional response.
That's disproportional to what's actually happening. Yeah.
I love
and
that.
The strong emotional response is actually, some people are comfortable with anger and some people aren't. And so the people who are uncomfortable in anger, their trigger response may look like withdrawal, shut down, freeze. So it could be an outburst of anger. It could also be an outburst of tears and crying. Like someone may say something that was not hurtful, but it hurt them because it reminded them of something, so they just start crying, or they took it in a way that they need to explore. And then also there can be just like hanging up the phone or walking away, or the withdrawal, kind of just shut down, not talking. So those all examples of how you can recognize when you're triggered. And those are like, it's something in you is getting triggered.
Right. And so what you just described, it was fight, flight, or freeze, right?
Exactly.
Those are the major trigger responses. So just feeling into like, how do you respond when you're upset by something? And, oh, that could be my trigger. That's what I do in that type of situation, right?
Yeah.
Had a funny thing in our household where my partner said something that would have triggered me not long ago. And instead of going into my story and withdrawing and then like attacking him through an email later, which would have happened,
right.
That was totally my response. Being defensive, not necessarily attacking, but being super defensive about it. I took it and I went, oh. And then later we actually laughed. And I was like, oh, did you see the growth in that? And he was like, yeah, let me tell you what you would have done before. And he pointed out the email portion. I forgot about that. I'm like, oh, you're totally right. You're totally right.
I love that. I love it because it's so great to see, the growth, and that you've been healed in many different ways by not like your reaction. There's no reaction anymore. And Doug and I do the same thing where I had eating disorders and body image disorders and all that. And so like when we first got together, I still needed to heal my insecurities around my body. And, so he would say like something that was like, oh, you wear a large, right? Something like that. And it was just like, you don't know how to talk to a woman that, or just like this, whoa. And to the point where years later, he's like, hey, Fatsy or Fatso, like whatever. And it's just like totally joking. But he likes to like say like the things that I've been healed from, where we just laugh and we're like, whatever, he's not actually calling me fat, just like, you guys, nor do I think I am. So, but Yeah. So yeah, it's so great to see like the healing as it happens through non-reaction to things that we always used to react to, you know, or having to defend or like process all the time. It's just like, yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult work, but it's so worth it every single day. That's what I tell people.
Yeah.
Like, it is worth it to be on, like, not that you're always on the other side of it, right? But to feel that progression, to feel that freedom in these certain circumstances that used to just completely throw me out of whack for a day or weeks or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, you saw me in that moment. That used to really make me mad, you know?
Right.
It's okay. Like, I'm glad actually that you can see me. I'm appreciative of that. Yeah, it's just, there's a lot of freedom in that, a lot of emotional freedom. So yeah. So thank you for doing this work with people, Elicia. Like, I'm so grateful to have had you on here and tell us. I know I'm going to be putting the links in the YouTube video and in the posts that I make on social media, but for anyone who's listening through iTunes or SoundCloud, etc., like, where is the best way for people to find you?
EliciaMiller.com, and it's ELICIA. So that's my website. The best way to get to know kind of the process and this work, and even I give away the first lesson in the core emotional healing self-study as a gift, because that explains kind of what it's all about and the top blocks to healing, to just I even have some journaling exercises and reflections in that as well. So I give that away as a gift. And so that's also on my website at eliciamiller.com/empowered. So I always, you know, direct people there. And I may have other gifts too. I have another gift coming up for the inner child meditation and inner guidance journaling workbook as well. So to help people connect more to their inner guidance after they connect to their inner child. But yeah, everything, as soon as someone signs up for my free gift, they'll be able to receive a lot of the things I have. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you so much. That's so generous. I love it when there are free gifts. Like, I know that it's life-changing work. Like, I know it firsthand. So I really appreciate you being here and helping us. And to anyone who's listening, I encourage you to go to Elicia's website. Again, it's Elicia Miller, ELICIA Miller.com, and you can do the /empowered and get her free gift. And again, this podcast is to help you understand that wherever you are in your life, if you're not 100% happy with it, A, that's normal. B, there's always a better you that's just waiting for you to step into that. And we've done this work. You are able to do this work. You're strong enough. You're powerful enough. We believe in you. And live your best life. Like, that's what we're all here to do. So
yeah,
thank you.
Don't give up.
Yes, don't give up.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Reach out for support too. Yeah.
It's okay to need help.
Yeah.
We all have needed help. I've definitely gotten a lot of help. You've got a lot of help.
Yeah.
It is
Always.
To me, it's more of a testament to strength to reach out for help than it is weakness. I mean, I think in the past there was this paradigm that I'm weak if I'm asking for help, and that is not the truth. Those are the weak people who, it's strength. It's true strength.
Yes.
So,
yes. Perfect.
So, thank you so much, Elicia.
Thank you, Celeste. Thank you so much for doing this. It's really important work that you're sharing with everyone that you're having on. So thank you. And this is a way to help people and for people to start thinking about things that they're not aware of or they can see differently. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And Thank you for everyone who has been touched by this podcast. Please feel free to share it, subscribe on whatever platform you're on, whether it's iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube. This is Celeste Hartwell with Divine Feminine Leaders. Thank you so much.
Mhm.